So this morning at the BBC, we were reminded that we have the present opportunity due to a lot of diverse causes and conditions. When you think of all of them, which are probably too many for us to even understand, and we see how almost miraculous it is that things have come together in this way, that we have this opportunity. And since so many of those causes and conditions depend on the kindness and the actions of other sentient beings, then it's only fair that we have the motivation to repay their kindness and to work for their benefit. So let's make that our motivation for sharing the Exploring Monastic Life program and for living our whole lives. And so in that way, dedicate ourselves to the bodhicitta motivation and dedicate ourselves to generating the wisdom that will enable us to become fully awakened Buddhas and be of the greatest benefit to all sentient beings. So each Exploring Monastic Life program is different. The teachings are different in each year. The people who attend are usually different, but there's some overlap with previous attendees. And so this year, what I thought to do as the basic part of the program, at least during the teaching time, is to talk about some of the passages in the ordination ceremony. I'm not going to go through the ordination ceremony and explain how it's done. I'll do that with the monastics at the Abbey in another time. But I wanted to go through because the Acharya says many things, the Upajjhayaka says many things. And when you're in the middle of the ordination, just trying to keep your robes on, you don't always have the opportunity to think deeply about what's being said. And there's some really beautiful things that are said in the ceremony that are helping us really think about what our motivation is, what ordination means. And so I thought to go through and explain some of those things. And so that's why we sent out the PDF of this booklet. We sent it out at the last minute, of course, so some of you didn't have the chance to download it, but that can be remedied. But before getting into that, I just wanted to talk in general about what ordination means. Because it's something that goes on inside of here. And yes, there's an outside change. You know, you have a different hairdo, you have a different clothes, yeah. But the change is really what's going on in here. And it's really saying, my spiritual practice is the most important thing in my life. Yeah. Bottom line, it's not my family, it's not my career, it's not having people love me, it's not being famous, it's not being comfortable and happy and having enough money. Yeah, the most important thing in my life is my spiritual practice. So it's really getting that clear in your mind and making that commitment. Yeah. And then once you have that commitment, then expressing it through taking precepts is the way that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Because if you really want to dedicate yourself to your spiritual practice, the first thing is to, as I say, to stop being a jerk. In other words, stop creating negative karma. And so that's the reason of taking the precepts, because we've thought about how we want to be in the world, what we want to do, what we don't want to do. And we've decided that, we don't want to kill and steal and lie and sleep around and drink and go to the disco and do all that kind of stuff anymore. Been there, done that. We want to do something different. And so taking the precepts is a very natural expression of how we want to live our lives when our spiritual practice is the most important thing, when liberation, when awakening is the most important thing in our life. Yeah. So many people forget that the Buddha was a monastic. Yeah. He was fully enlightened. He could have manifested in many, many, many different ways. And I'm sure he did for countless sentient beings. But the general way that he manifested when he taught the Dharma was as a monastic. Yeah. So that's telling us something. That's indicating something. Like, what is the most conducive kind of situation for practicing? Now, some of you may disagree with that. That's fine. EML is the one time, the one course I teach where I can be perfectly frank and I don't have to say nice things so that the lay people don't feel upset. Okay? So, if anybody feels upset, manage it, okay? Yeah, but this is the one course where you all signed up because you're interested in monastic ordination. So I'm going to speak straight, okay? And I'm not going to, say all sorts of pleasantries. When you ordain, okay, there's a few things going on. One is your commitment to your spiritual practice. And that's indicated by taking the precepts and your feeling of connection to the Buddha. So your ordination, you have a direct connection to the Buddha because you're really following in the Buddha's footsteps, saying, I'm going to live a lifestyle like the Buddha did. Not exactly like the Buddha did. Okay, we don't have Bodhi trees here, and we're not going to go out and sit under a pine tree. We could, but the turkeys can make offerings to us. So we have to adapt it to 20th century, and to our situation. But our ordination is between us and the Buddha. Okay, so you have to feel that really strong, because if things, in our life, things go up, things go down, you like things, you don't like things, people praise you, people blame you, all of that happens. But you have to be really confident that your ordination is a really precious link to the Buddha that doesn't depend on what other people say to you or about you. Okay? At the same time, and so what that means is when you have problems in your world, it doesn't mean that you start questioning your ordination and saying, oh, if only I were a layperson, I wouldn't have this problem, I wouldn't have that problem. That's not true, because wherever we go, we take our mind with us. Yeah, it would be so wonderful if Trump doesn't want to let immigrants in. I wish he wouldn't let my ignorance, anger, and attachment in. That when I went in with my passport, he said, you can come, but your ignorance, anger, and attachment, they are rejected. Yeah, they cannot come in this country. I say, okay, President Trump, I agree with you for once. Yeah. But unfortunately, he lets my ignorance, anger, and attachment come with me. Yeah. And so, so then I have these things hanging on that I have to deal with. And so all my problems originate in my mind. They don't originate in the environment. They originate in here. Okay? Also, when you ordain, you're joining a community, you're joining a sangha, a harmonious assembly. And in one way, we're joining the Sangha of the 10 directions. The Buddha speaks a lot about that, the Sangha of the 10 directions. All the monastics everywhere, okay? So we're part of that. And we're also, if we join a community, part of that community. And I highly recommend people living in a monastic community before they ordain, after they ordain, because that's really the only way you're going to get training. Yeah. Ordaining and living on your own, you just keep up with all your bad habits. Yeah. So there's a lot of things, you're joining that community. The rules, every community has rules. The rules, so to speak, are our precepts. Yeah. If we commit root downfalls of the precepts, we are distancing ourselves from the community that supports us. Okay. Every monastery has in-house rules or guidelines, and so same thing. We try and live by them because they're set up to create harmony. Okay, but basically, I think the community gives us support, and we have to support the community. It's two ways. You can't go in and say, I want the community to support me because I need this and I want this and I prefer this. We've got to go in with an attitude of the community supports me, but I've got to support the community. And how do I support it? I live according to the guidelines set up by the community. I do my best to keep my precepts. I go to Posada and I confess and restore my precepts that have been broken. I offer service to the community. I try and, live my monastic life in harmony with the other people around me. So ordination is not just about keeping precepts. Yeah, it's easy to think that because you have a ceremony and then you come out and you have all these precepts, and then you think, oh no, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do the other thing. Anyway, you already decided you don't want to do those things, so that's okay. If you haven't decided that you don't want to do those things, then it's better not to ordain, if you really want to go out and murder somebody, please don't ordain. If you want to sleep around, if you want to go drinking, if you want to go drugging, if you want to go to the disco, don't ordain. Live your lay life and be a happy lay person. Okay? So, we've already kind of decided the direction we want to take. We have afflictions in our mind. We get distracted. Our mind goes here and it goes there, and we get tangled up and confused. But that's one of the beauties of living with the community is everybody's going in the same direction. So even if we start to get wobbly or we get unhappy, we're in this container, and the boat's going that way. So, and we're on that boat. So we're going that way with everybody else. Or another analogy they say is if you're in a forest, all the trees are growing up. So you're an individual tree. You can't grow sideways. You got to grow up straight like everybody. If you're a lone tree in the middle of a field, the wind's going to blow here, the wind's going to go there, the animals are going to come chew at your bark. It's much harder, okay? But if you're in the middle of the forest, you grow the same direction everybody grows. And so it's a tremendous support for our practice. And then, like I said, we support the rest of the community by giving our energy in that way. And so ordination is not just about the precepts, okay? I think it's really about character building. Yeah? It's about transforming our mind. It's about building character, making ourselves into very clear-sighted, wise, compassionate people, yeah, who can deal with any situation. Okay, in other words, becoming Buddhas. Yeah, but it's really about, transforming our mind, building our character, learning how to be the kind of people that we want to be, instead of always living with, but I'm just little old me, and I can't do this, and I can't do that, and nobody likes me, and nobody listens to me. I make so many suggestions, and they just tune me out. I can't develop. No, that's, if you have that attitude, you're not growing. Yeah, your character is not being developed. You're stuck in your old, video. Okay, like we've been until now. So really what we're trying to do is, tear down some of those barriers and develop the confidence that we really can do things that we didn't think we could do. And then go about creating the causes to be able to do them. Yeah? So really building up the kind of people that we want to be. Yeah. So it's not escaping from anything. Like I said, our problems all come with us. If you think you're leaving your problems behind, the only problem you're leaving behind is trying to decide what clothes to wear every morning. You're not going to have that problem again, okay? So you solve that one. But, what else are you going to escape from? What other problem? Yeah, they all come. Yeah, so we've got to deal with them, and that is the beauty, and that is what Dharma practice means. Yeah, Dharma practice isn't about, the study is beautiful, and I love the philosophical study, yeah. But the purpose of that is to apply it to our mind, not just to know, the author of this and the author of that and the number of categories and all the definitions and different things, But the purpose is to transform what's going on in here, okay? And so we've got to spend time looking at our own mind. And then trying to understand it, and applying the Dharma antidotes and really enhancing our capabilities. Okay? So we're trying to become good human beings. We're not trying to become scholars who just have a bunch of words. Yeah. We're not trying to become our image of the perfect Dharma practitioner. Yeah, I don't know if you have an image, but I know in the early years I had this image of the perfect Dharma practitioner, that I should be. And the tradition gave two perfect images. I was either supposed to be like Jay Rinpoche or like Milarepa. Okay? So I wanted to be like Jay Rinpoche. Yeah, and go to South India, do all the debating, Only problem was, I was a woman. Can't do that. They wouldn't let me in the monasteries. Be Milarepa. Yeah, I wanted to do that. I was going to stay in India and Nepal and never come back to this crazy country. But I also knew that to meditate, I didn't meditate long-term. I needed to learn. Yeah, if you don't learn, it's difficult to be in retreat for a long time. Yeah. Because meditation isn't just closing your eyes and rolling your eyeballs back and waiting for emptiness to appear. It's not like that, okay? So, and I didn't especially want to be Mother Teresa, go the social welfare route, but I wanted to be a little bit of all three of them. Yeah. So the Abbey is kind of created like that. Yeah. We have our meditation periods every day. We have our study periods every day. We have offering service every day. Yeah. And so I think this kind of enriches different parts of our character. And just day by day, we do our practice. We live our life. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to since we're all living within the framework of the Abbey now, just to read our mission statement and explain it a little bit so that people will have an idea the way we're headed, because we're not trying to copy a Tibetan monastery or nunnery. Yeah. I think Westerners need, we need the practical thing, and we need to learn how to become a community. I think in many ways Tibetans, just, they, when you're a kid, you move in and your aunt or uncle is your teacher, and you live in the Kamsen with people from your area in Tibet, even though you're now in exile. And so you have community all around you, Westerners want community, but we're also very individualistic. Yeah. So we want support, but we want to do things our way. Okay? And so that becomes a problem. We don't know how to be a community. So I think learning that is part of our practice. And each community is different, There's so many different communities, Buddhist communities, monastic communities in the West and in the world. And some emphasize study, some emphasize practice, some emphasize social service. There's a whole big choice of what you want to emphasize. So people also need to check out, kind of according to their own personality, what they want to do, how they, where they want to train and how they want to live. So the Abbey is one option. Like I said, we aren't trying to recreate a Tibetan monastery here. Many, many years ago, I was talking with Kyabji Zopa Rinpoche, and we were talking about Tarpa Chuling, Geshe Rapton's monastic community in outside of Geneva, Switzerland. And when Geshe-la was alive, it was teeming with energy. There were lots of Western monks there. They all spoke Tibetan. They did debating in Tibetan. I went there to visit. I was like, I want to do that, but I couldn't stay at the monastery. I had to stay across the street. But anyway, and they were just doing the whole Tibetan thing, yeah? And then after Geshe-la passed away and some other things happened, then all of those monks were gone. I think of all the ones who were there when I visited, when did I visit? The early 80s. I think maybe one is still ordained. And I remember talking with Zopa Rinpoche about this, and he was commenting that Westerners need Dharma practice that's going to touch their hearts. Yeah? And I think that's really true. We want something that will move us inside. If we wanted information, we could go to university. Yeah? There's many great Buddhist studies department, in this country and in other countries. But we're wanting something that's going to move us in here. Yeah, that's really going to touch in here. And so just, for the Tarpa Chuling monks, just recreating the Tibetan monastery, it didn't touch what was here. And I think that's what we need and what we're looking for. So let me read you our mission statement so you can get an idea of what we're doing. Okay. So Sravasti Abbey supports a flourishing monastic community. Flourishing. Okay. Yeah. What was it? When Khensa Wangduk was here, what did we have? Like 10,000 monastics? Yeah. So flourishing. Yeah. But it means not just numbers flourishing, it means flourishing in our hearts, so that the people who live here are flourishing and thriving and growing. Okay. Supports a flourishing monastic community where learning and practicing Buddhist teachings cultivate peace in the hearts of residents, visitors, and the world. Okay, so the monastery, we're trying to learn and practice the Buddhist teachings. For what purpose? To create peace in the hearts of the residents, the people who live here, the visitors who come and stay for however long they want to, and whatever works out, and the world, So our ultimate purpose is to benefit the entire world. We seek to preserve Buddhist teachings, root them deeply in Western soil, and build an enduring Sangha to serve sentient beings for as long as space endures. Okay? So why are we here? We have a long-term vision. Okay? Yeah, none of us are going to live forever. We're not, we'll be lucky if we come back in the next rebirth and continue with this. But our vision is very long-term. So we want to preserve the Buddhist teachings. Why? Because we can't take for granted that the Buddhist teachings are already all, going to continue. And also because when, for example, when I was a Shramanarika, my thought was always with my own practice. Yeah, what's good for my Dharma practice? Where do I want to go? What do I want to learn? Who do I want to be with? Who are the teachers I want to learn from? Everything was about my practice. Once I became a bhikshuni, I realized, now I have the responsibility to carry on the Dharma for future generations, because it hit me that the only reason I had the opportunity to take ordination, not the only reason, but a big reason I had the opportunity to take the ordination, was because people from the time of the Buddha had taken the precepts and kept the ordination and given the ordination. Yeah. So there was this whole wave of virtuous energy starting from the Buddha and his initial Sangha coming forward, forward, forward. I got swept up in it. And now I had a responsibility to keep it going so that other people could benefit just as I've benefited. So it wasn't just about my practice and what I wanted to do. Yeah. It's really about preserving the teachings. And I think especially when the Dharma's coming to the West and we have what I call Dharma light, yeah, it's very important that there's people who are practicing in a much more serious way. Dharma light is great for attracting people. It benefits many people, but there's got to be Dharma heavy? Dharma serious, or I don't know what you want to call it. Okay? So that's what we're trying to do. And we want to build an enduring Sangha. So not just a Sangha that is here right now, okay? Because we're going to die. And so we have to make it so that new people come in, yeah? And arrange it so that the Sangha can continue to exist, so that this beautiful jewel of the ordination and the beautiful jewel of the Dharma can exist in our world for all the people who want to benefit from it. Yeah? So that's part of what we're trying to do. It's part of our responsibility. Yeah. Okay, build an enduring Sangha to serve sentient beings. So not just to serve me, not just to make sure I have food every day, okay, but to serve sentient beings for as long as space endures. So that's a long time. Yeah? And so the ultimate purpose, to benefit sentient beings. Whoever they are, who's ever receptive, may we be of benefit. This morning, I don't know, some of you may have caught wind of it, people probably not. Somebody from Elk showed up at our door, sobbing, wanting help. She had been here sometime before, and she walks in and she wants help. So what do? We stop and we sit with her. Yeah? And so we serve sentient beings. I mean, whoever comes this way and who needs some help, we stop and we help. Yeah? So that's part of our mission. And, I was so amazingly touched that she thought of coming up here, considering that she had just been here one time and it was in her official capacity, but she somehow knew that there were going to be compassionate people up here that she could talk to. So so that's our purpose. For as long as space endures, we're going to do this. We practice gender equality, are socially engaged, and care about the environment. Okay? So these are values that we think are really important in the West today. Yeah. There is gender discrimination in the tradition. I think most of it comes from the culture, although there are some things in the scriptures. But I think most of it comes from the culture. And Buddhism is not going to spread in the West if that gender inequality continues. Yeah? And so the way we live here is, as I say, gender equality, except when it comes to carrying heavy things, and then the guys can do it. Sorry, guys. But I've seen the nuns carry some heavy things too, so. Okay, but I think that's very important for Buddhism to spread in our culture, otherwise it just won't work. Social engagement is also important. Yeah, people write us for advice. They want to know if we're speaking out on social issues, if we're doing things to benefit the world around us, or if we're reclusive, because some of the Catholics the orders are more reclusive. People want to know that we are in touch with the world and offering service, offering help. Okay, and then we care about the environment, because we all live in this environment, and other beings are going to be born into it, and we need to care about it because we care about all the other living beings. Okay, so these are things that are quite important, I think, in our culture today. They weren't important when the Buddha was alive. They weren't important in pre-1959 Tibet. Okay. Social engagement was not an issue there because the family units were tight. All the families supported each other. The environment wasn't an issue because they didn't have plastic and all this polluting stuff in old Tibet. And even when they came to India, they just threw it over the mountainside, and it wasn't until some of the Westerners came and said you have to clean up the environment that they started to think about some of that. Okay, gender equality wasn't an issue, you know. It was a traditional culture. It's been like that for hundreds of years. Why change it? Yeah, but living in the West now in 21st century, you know, there's other things that are in people's minds that are important. And if we neglect those, they're not going to be interested in the teachings. And if we don't apply the Buddha's teachings to those issues, then we're abdicating, I think, our responsibility to act as the conscience of society. So I know that was an earful. We'll have time to discuss it and digest it as time goes on. Okay, so let's look at the Pravaja. My Sanskrit pronunciation is not so good. Pravaja means going forth, okay? What going forth is, you are going forth from home life to homeless life, you know? And at the Buddha's times, that is exactly what happened. You left your family and you became a wandering mendicant, yeah? Now we don't really become wandering mendicants, but mentally, we have to leave our family. We are no longer a householder, okay? A householder has a family, has a career, has a bank account, has savings, has financial security, can go on vacation, yeah, can do lots of different things. Yeah? When you're a monastic, you're setting that life aside, you know, and it's very clear in the ceremony. There's one space, one point at the beginning of the ordination ceremony where you go and say goodbye to your parents. And for people who ordain later, they need to say goodbye to their children too, because as a monastic, you can't be involved in all the family drama. It doesn't mean you don't speak to your family again. Of course, you speak to your family, yeah, and you're friendly, and you don't stop being somebody's, you know, relative. But the way you relate to them changes, okay? And so you're not going to be involved in all the family drama. Because how are you going to be a renunciant if your mental energy is all worried about who's speaking to who and who is in debt and, you know, whose marriage isn't going well and whose child isn't behaving properly and all this kind of stuff, you know? If your mind is completely involved in your family, it's going to be very, very difficult to practice. You won't have time and you won't have mental space, okay? So you find a different way of relating to your family. You know, you're always somebody's daughter or son or parent, whatever it is. Yeah, brother, sister. But we have to find a different way of relating to the family. Yeah. So going forth means that. And it's also going forth from having a career. Yeah, because, you know, isn't a career or aren't a career and money part of the meaning of being successful nowadays? Yeah, you have a career. You always wanted your parents' approval. Now you have this career. You have a 5-digit, 6-digit even, maybe income every year. Wow, fantastic. Finally, your parents think you're wonderful. Yeah? Yeah, is that the meaning of your life? Okay, is that what it means to be successful? Yeah, there's millions of, lots of rich people around the world. Are they happy? Yeah. And what happens to them when they die? Yeah. So we're seeing the world, we're seeing success in a very different way. And we can't live like a two-pointed needle, okay? Yeah, I'm going to take care of my family, make sure everybody's okay, because I'm the big fixer. Yeah, everybody has to be okay. Nobody's allowed to be unhappy. I'm going to make sure everybody's okay. And I'm going to practice the Dharma. Or I'm going to have my career. I'm going to climb, all the steps to be very successful. I'm going to make a ton of money. My family's going to approve of me. Society's going to think I'm fantastic. I'm rich. I'm successful. Yeah. And I'm going to practice the Dharma. Yeah. It's like you're having two different motivations for your life. Okay? So I'm not saying you have to be poor, but, if making a name for yourself and getting money is what you want to do with your life, do that, and then you practice Dharma on the sideline as a hobby, as something that is helpful in your life. Yeah, but you can't have that as a motivation and be a monastic at the same time. Or you can do that, and then we see what happens to monastics that do that. Okay. Are you getting what I'm saying here? Yeah. So, it's a real reorientation in terms of what is the most important thing in our lives. So, the rite, and this is the Dharmaguptaka rite. There's different Vinaya lineages. There's 3 extant Vinaya lineages nowadays. The Theravada, or the one that's in Pali, the Chinese, which is the Dharmaguptaka, and the Tibetan one, which is Mula Sravastivada. So there used to be many different lineages, but they've gone out of existence. Nowadays we have these 3. So here at the Abbey, we follow the Dharmaguptaka, because that's the one that is followed in Chinese Buddhism, and it's the only extant lineage until recently where they have fully, where they have bhikshuni ordination. And so all of our women want to become bhikshunis, so we follow that tradition. Yeah. Okay, so in the very beginning, it talks about the preliminaries to ordination. So I'm just going to read a little bit and talk about it. Like I said, I'm not going to go through all the details, but just read parts here and there. So it says, ordaining and allowing people to enter the Sangha community is carried out to continue the Buddha's lineage and to enable the Buddha Dharma to continue from one generation to the next without interruption. Okay, that's the first sentence. Yeah? So that's the purpose of ordaining and allowing people to enter the Sangha community. Yeah, it's to continue the Buddha's lineage, to enable the Buddha Dharma to continue from one generation to the next without interruption. Now, we may say, but that's just supporting the religious institution. We're just trying to perpetuate the religious institution. I don't want to be part of doing that. No, this isn't perpetuating the Buddhist religious institution. It's perpetuating the Dharma teachings. Okay? The Dharma teachings, the Dharma practice is something different than religious institutions. Okay? The Dharma practice, the teachings, that's the path to awakening. That's the realizations that we're trying to build up in our own mind that will take us to full awakening. Yeah. Religious institutions are things created by human beings. Yeah. The teachings come from the Buddha. The path consciousnesses we actualize in our mind come through our own effort. religious institutions are founded by sentient beings in order to kind of help all these people stay in the same boat and go in the same direction, okay? But as we know, things done by human beings, ordinary human beings who have defilements, yeah, there's going to be problems. Yeah, there's never going to be a perfect religious institution. And our job, the way I see religious institutions, they are useful to the extent that they help people practice, learn and practice the Dharma and sustain the Dharma. Aside from helping to do that, I don't think there's much purpose for religious institutions. It's not to self-perpetuate, to be able to give the crown to the next, to keep the monastic dynasty going, That's not the purpose, okay? The purpose is just to act as something that assists human beings in doing their practice. But there's going to be problems with institutions. So one thing that's very important in your ordination is do not confuse any doubts or challenges you may have about a religious institution with the Dharma practice and the teachings. They're two different things. So don't get them confused. You may have problems with how a religious institution is organizing itself or what it's doing, but that is no reason to question your ordination. Because your ordination is between you and the Buddha to help you become a Buddha. Yeah, the religious institution is something else, okay? So you may use the Dharma to work with your mind so you don't, so you figure out some good way to relate to the institution. But the purpose is not just to perpetuate the institution. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so the principal concern then lies in the quality of the teacher. Whoever is a teacher must master the Vinaya and precepts, be possessed of practice and knowledge, and be endowed with wisdom in teaching disciples. The tall order. Then they can then be a teacher, ordain candidates, and take them in as dependents. So this thing about taking people in as dependents, when you ordain somebody, according to Vinaya, you are responsible for providing them with room and board and teachings. Okay. Now, some Buddhist traditions, the teachers really do that. Some, they don't. In the Tibetan tradition, at least for the Westerners, the teachers do not take that as a commitment on their part for their disciples. And so Western disciples are often left to find their own way financially. Okay, and I have a lot to say about that, but I won't say it today. But it's something that you have to be aware of if you ordain. Yeah, because different groups, different teachers do things in different ways. Here at the Abbey, if you ordain or live with the Abbey, you may start out living somewhere else and then move here, then you're provided with room and board and teachings. I take that commitment quite personally. But the Tibetans, because they're a refugee community, their major responsibility is towards the Tibetan monks. Yeah. So you have to be aware of that if you ordain as a Westerner. You're nodding your head. Yeah. Okay. So the teacher has a responsibility to the students, but the students also have a responsibility to the teacher. So when you ordain, you become a dependent on the teacher, okay? Which means you stay with the teacher and the community, and you train for a certain number of years. You don't ordain and then move into your own flat and live your life just as you did before, but just cutting your hair and wearing robes, okay? So it's really important that you have that training with a teacher in a community. And I say that because, at least in the West, the setting up monasteries for the Western Sangha has not been the primary focus of the Tibetan monastics. We're very much left on our own, and so you have to think about that before you ordain. How are you going to eat? Where's the money going to come from? Yeah, all these kinds of things. So it is good to be very aware. Yeah, in the Chinese tradition, yeah, if you live in a monastery, you're completely provided for. And actually, they're quite critical of people who don't live in a monastery. You probably heard that at your ordination, what they have to say. Same in Theravada. The community, the teachers take care of you. Yeah, in the Tibetan tradition, it's quite different. Sometimes you may go and work in a Dharma center. The Dharma center may give you room and board, but you have to work a certain number of hours and do certain tasks. So it's kind of like a job, in a way, except it's in a Dharma community. Yeah. It's not in a monastic setting, so you're not going to get the monastic training. Yeah. But so these are just things to think about. Okay, so you're dependent on your teacher, but that means you serve your teacher. Okay, so when you serve your teacher, that means you try and, your teacher has lots of responsibilities, and your teacher has lots of ideas for projects, and so you volunteer your assistance in doing these projects that are designed to benefit sentient beings, and you offer service just in the general way of helping to keep your teacher alive, okay? So you don't make it so that you ask your teacher to do things for you, okay? You're already requested ordination, but you don't come into a monastery and say, okay, I want to change everything around, and I want this and I want that, and let's invite this teacher, and let's have that kind of activity, and I want to do this and I want to do that. And here's your teacher trying to keep everything together, and everything's very busy to start with, and you have 10 million ideas that you want your teacher to actualize while you sit back and wait for your teacher to do all those things that you've assigned them to do. Okay? So it's not like that. Yeah? It's we serve our teachers. Yeah? Okay. So therefore, the Samanta Pasadika, this is it's a Theravada Pali text translated into Chinese. It says, a person who does not understand the Vinaya but knows only Sutra and Abhidharma is not allowed to ordain novices or to take them in as dependents. Because Vinaya masters are able to uphold the Vinaya, the Buddha Dharma will remain in the world for 5,000 years. Okay, also the Sutra of 500 Questions by Mahamoggallana on Vinaya matters says, some monastics who do not recite the precepts or do not know the various matters associated with monastic life ordain many people or act as one of the 3 ordination masters. Do they commit a misdeed? Reply, these people are not even qualified to receive alms from the faithful, how much less to ordain people. Those who intend to be a teacher must take this matter seriously. Okay, so you have to know the Vinaya to ordain somebody. Yeah, you have to know something about it. You have to recite the precepts. You have to do the foundation rituals and practices of the Vinaya, the Posada, the Varsa, the Pravarana, and so on. Okay? So you can't just ordain and then make yourself into a teacher and say, okay, now I'm going to start ordaining people. Yeah. There was one Westerner, I won't mention names, who made himself into a big teacher and had he was a monk, and had a consort, a wife, which is totally contradictory to the precepts. And I saw a picture of him ordaining somebody with his wife there. Yes. So this is that kind of screwy thing that can happen in the West. So that kind of thing, that's not a valid ordination by any shape or form. Yeah, unfortunately, the person who received it didn't know that. Yeah. Okay, so when ordaining people, a teacher needs to exercise great caution in choosing those with suitable natural capacity. They should know that not everyone is capable of leaving home and becoming a monastic. Okay, so this also is very important. And if I can make some comments about what's happened in terms of the Western Sangha throughout the years. Our Tibetan teachers are very happy to ordain us. Most of them don't speak English, or even if they speak English, they aren't very familiar with Western culture. That's beginning to change a little bit now with the younger generation of Geshis. But by and large, the generation of teachers that I had were not familiar with Western culture and so on. And people would come and say, I want to ordain. And they would say, okay, come tomorrow with robes. And they got ordained like that. And then these people, when I lived in France at George Pomo, we had to take these people in. We had no choice whether to take somebody in. If our teacher ordained them, we had to take them. Okay. So this is not how the Vinaya functions. How the Vinaya functions is that the community decides if they're going to accept somebody. Yeah. And they look at that person's suitability as a candidate. Yeah. Because in the early days, it's simply because our teachers didn't know much about Western culture. They couldn't tell the difference between somebody who had mental problems and somebody who didn't. Yeah, because they didn't speak the language. So they couldn't understand what somebody was saying. So I remember living in Dharamsala. There were some people who ordained who really were quite severely ill. I remember one person, I don't know if she was actually ordained or if she just put on robes, but her shemdop was hiked up to her knees, and she would stand on the side of the road smoking cigarettes. And then there was somebody else who would stand on the side of the road like in a catatonic state, like that, And so these people, ordination doesn't benefit them. They don't have the ability to keep it. But our teachers didn't know. So, and then, we had to take people like this in, or people with very difficult personalities. And so it was very, very difficult setting up Western monasteries and Sangha communities. Yeah, very difficult. Because we were all new. We didn't understand the Vinaya and what it meant to live as a Sangha. Our teachers, didn't understand us and our culture, and they thought these Westerners are pretty strange. So it was quite difficult in the beginning. Now I think, hopefully things are beginning to change. But still, there's a lot of problems that arise. I think a lot because there's not established communities and people. Now they have a pre-ordination program in Dharamsala, which is really good. For one, or I think it's now up to 2 weeks. Do you know how long it is now? 2? Yeah, 2 weeks. So that's really good. Yeah, when I was around, there was no pre-ordination program. I heard that one of the Western monks or nuns who taught the program, and here's to show you the value of having this kind of training. It's only 2 weeks, and it's before the ordination. You really need years of training. But anyway, they told the story of one man who came who wanted to become a monk and who didn't realize that being a monk meant you had to be celibate. So he was going to take the precepts and then go back home and live with his wife until he went to the monastic preordination course and learned that that wasn't in the, what he could do. Okay, so so there are all these kinds of things. It's just really quite amazing what happened. I could tell you a lot of stories, which may come out over time, but the reason I tell you these crazy things is to illustrate the point of why holding to the Vinaya is important, and why having training before you ordain and after you ordain is important, and why living in a community is important. Okay. So therefore, the Mahasangika Vinaya says, when a person is 7 years old and knows good from bad, ordination may be given. Okay, so that's talking about children. Originally there was just the full ordination, but then they would ordain these little kids, and the little kids would cry at night, and they would miss their mom and dad, and it was too hard. It was too hard for them. So then the Buddha set up the Shramanera ordination, the novice ordination for the little kids, and then they could take that and until they were 20 years old, and then they could take the full ordination. So this is the difficulty with the nuns in the Tibetan tradition and in some of the Theravada countries now, in that they don't have access to the full ordination, so they have, the 10 novice precepts, but they aren't full members of the Sangha, and you aren't allowed to have the complete Vinaya training. So that's something also I think that needs to be improved and changed. Okay, those who are younger than 70 but need to be cared for when going to bed and getting up should not be given ordination. Why? Because if you're old and you can't take care of yourself, then what's your motivation for ordaining? It's probably so that somebody else will take care of you. That's not a proper a motivation for being ordained. Okay? And so that's also one of the reasons why if you have certain physical things happening, then why you aren't supposed to receive ordination, because who's going to take care of you? The Sangha is not a place you go because you need a home health care assistant. And the Sangha is not a place you go where, to ordain because you want physical, financial support when you're old. Okay? So it says this in the Vinaya, and, and it's actually quite important, otherwise it becomes very difficult. This last ordination in Taiwan, they had quite a number of elderly people ordain, and I could see it was so difficult for some of them, even to bow or to stay kneeled. It was so difficult. And then, all the guiding monks and nuns were saying, well, what are these people going to go do when they go back to their old monasteries? Who's going to take care of them? Are you going to ask all the junior monastics to take care of the seniors? Yeah, then who's going to train? How will the junior monastics get training if they do that? Okay. So on one hand, the Chinese are quite strict about that, about not, and also at the Buddhist time, because the Dr. Javaka would offer the Sangha free medical services. So then a lot of people started to ordain so that they would get to see the doctor for free. Not the right motivation. Okay, so that's why some of these rules came about in terms of who can ordain and who can't. Okay, those who are older than 70 and are still able to work are not allowed to go forth and receive the ordination. Okay, so they're still able to work, but because they're too old, chances are they will develop health problems within the next few years, and it will be difficult for them. What the Chinese do, and I think the Theravadas too, to some extent too, is they allow for the elder lay people to come live in the monastery and serve the monastics. So they are supported there, living and serving, but then when they get incapacitated, they have to go back to their family who takes care of them. But at least when they're old, they can live near the Sangha. They can create a lot of merit by offering service to the Sangha. So that's nice. Those who are too old or too young but have been ordained should not be expelled. So if they've already been ordained, you can't kick them out. Okay. However, the teacher commits a light offense. Those who are not too old or too young, but who are not able to carry out the practice, should not be ordained. Okay, so people who physically can't keep up with the schedule in the monastery, people who mentally cannot follow the teachings, or for whatever reason, then they're not allowed to be ordained. I'm not here talking about people who are slow learners who have to put in extra energy to study. I'm talking about people here who have, a mental illness and cannot follow the discipline and the schedule, or cannot follow the study program, and they want to ordain just to, get support or whatever. Okay. Ordaining these above-mentioned people does nothing but increase the burden of the Buddha Dharma. Okay? Because then you have a Sangha consisting of people who all need help. And, of course we all need help, but as a Sangha member, you want to be able to offer help to others. Yeah. Okay. So that's that. Then at the beginning of the ceremony, the guides, there's a chant leader and a senior guide, and they lead the candidate to go and request ordination. They go and request the upajjhayaka, who is the preceptor, and the acharya, or the instructors, to come. And here I'm talking about the novice ordination. Okay, the Shramanera ordination. Okay, so when the guides do this, the disciple goes and bows in front of the two teachers, and then the senior guides lead them and says to them, virtuous ones, they're addressing the teachers, disciple so-and-so would like to go forth from home life into homelessness. Okay, so there it said right at the beginning. This is before the teachers have even entered the hall. The disciple so-and-so would like to go forth from home life into homelessness to practice the Dharma and become a Buddha. That's what our motivation should be. Okay, he or she invites the two teachers to enter the hall. Yeah. And then they lead the teacher back to the hall. So right there, again, in those two sentences, it lays out, if you're one of those candidates, yeah, what is your motivation to practice the Dharma and become a Buddha? And what are you doing? You want to go forth from home life to homelessness. Okay? So that's said right at the very get-go. So you have to have that very clear in your mind. Then they lead you back in the hall, and then you do the incense offering, which, before I explain, I think we should chant. Yeah? Because when you chant it, you get a feeling for it, and then I can explain what it means. So this particular chant that we're going to do, it's sung at the beginning of almost everything that you do in a Chinese monastery. All the different ceremonies and so forth and meditations. And it's really very, very moving. There's something, I think, about the Chinese chanting that really touches you. Don't use the teeny, teeny one. Use the next one up. Yeah. And it really sets the tone. I'll read the words here, so at least you know the words when we're chanting them. Okay. So it says, when incense in the urn is heated, the universe is perfumed. The assembly of Buddhas, vast as the ocean, sense it from afar. Auspicious clouds form everywhere. Where sincere minds abound, the entire bodies of Buddhas all appear. Homage to perfumed cloud canopy, Bodhisattva, Mahasattva. So in making the incense offering, someone walks up to the front of the room and offers incense. We're inviting all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to be here for what we're about to do. So here, in the context of the ordination, you're inviting them all to come and witness the ordination. So that's how we start. Yeah. So I'll just explain it briefly and then we'll take a break. But So when the incense in the urn is heated, the universe is perfumed. So we have incense at the beginning, we light it, and we imagine that the perfume is pervading the entire world. And the incense is looked at as something that purifies, where there's pollution, and things are stinky. We don't pull out the bathroom spray, and you use incense and you purify the whole place. Also because morality, they say that people who keep pure morality have the sweet smell around them. Okay, so incense, sweet smell, pure morality all go together. Okay, so when we're offering the incense and the universe is being perfumed, then all the assembly of Buddhas from all the Pure Lands, from all their meditation states, from wherever they are, whatever they're doing, they sense it. So all the Buddhas are tuned into what we're doing. Yeah, they aren't somewhere far away, oceans away, unrelated to us, but they sense it from afar. Yeah. And the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, vast as an ocean, so they all go, okay, something's happening at this monastery. Yeah, I want to go and check it out. And we're inviting them to come, and witness this and be part of it. Okay, so auspicious clouds form everywhere because we make a gorgeous, beautiful environment created by our virtue, not just out of ordinary beauty, but, created by our virtue or by our merit, to invite them to that kind of place. Okay, and then this next line, when sincere minds abound, the entire bodies of Buddhas all appear. Okay, so sincere minds, that's our minds. Okay, when we're sincere in our practice, when we really want to transform our mind, when we really have faith and confidence and trust in the three jewels, okay, then our hearts are open and we become very, very receptive vessels. Then the three jewels can really help us. Okay, so when sincere minds abound, what happens? Okay, the entire bodies of the Buddhas all appear. Yeah. Now, when you've done some study, we talk sometimes about 2 Buddha bodies or 3 Buddha bodies, 4, sometimes 5. They all mean this, come down to the same thing. But we think, that the Buddha's Dharmakaya, the Dharma body of the Buddha's omniscient mind appears. Together with the Buddha's omniscient mind comes the Svavikakaya, the cessation and the emptiness of inherent existence of the Buddha's mind. That's also appearing. Together with that, we have the form bodies of the Buddha, all the Sambhogakayas, the enjoyment bodies of the Buddha. They all appear from their Akanista pure lands, and all the emanation bodies, the forms the Buddha appears to communicate with us ordinary beings. We imagine that they all appear, so we're getting from the obvious, the emanation bodies, to the very subtlest of, the emptiness and true cessations on a Buddha's mental continuum. And all of those, the Buddha bodies, all appear. We can think that they all appear in the environment, but they all appear in our mind. When sincere minds abound, we become open and receptive. The Buddhas can help us. The Buddha bodies appear and inspire us to create the causes to generate those same things in our own mind. And so, we've imagined all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they're all coming here, little old Sravasti Abbey, out in the middle of nowhere in this land of barbarians. And all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas show up here because we're going to do something virtuous. And it's quite inspiring when you think about that. And then we pay homage. I don't know anything about perfumed cloud canopy Bodhisattva Mahasattva. Do you know anything? Okay, so, but it doesn't really matter. When I say that, I'm thinking all the Bodhisattvas. I'm not just bowing to one or two of them, okay? But all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And when we say homage in Sanskrit is namo. It means to bow, to make offerings, to take refuge in, to show respect to. So we, really are changing our mental attitude at the very beginning of what we're about to do. And it becomes very powerful because it's setting the stage and changing our mind. And then from there we move in to the rest of the ceremony. So, think about the four kayas, the four Buddha bodies, when we chant this, and think that they're all appearing to you.